Now, if you bought into Peloton when I talked about this business in April, when I said good leadership and the COVID crisis is going to create an explosion of value, if you bought it then, you would have made 200% in gains by now. But the earnings is coming up again, and one of the members have requested that we speak about Peloton, so we will. If this is the type of content you've been looking for, please hit the like button and let's get started. Peloton started off as a niche at-home product. Basically, you get a really high-end bicycle at home that looks like a piece of art, right? You pay a shit ton of money, plus you continue to pay subscription fee, and you get this at-home experience that most people don't understand. I personally didn't understand it until my girlfriend bought one for herself because it's important for her to save commute time so she can work out anytime she wants. And because she did that, I got a chance to try out something I normally wouldn't. Now that I've tried it, I completely understand why there's brand love for Peloton. I also understand why analysts really don't like Peloton because they're basically looking at it from the angle of numbers. They're looking at it from historical data. And if you just look at it from that angle, it doesn't make sense. This is why I always advocate that you invest in what you believe in. You invest in the products that you use because this way you have an edge beyond what the analysts can see. If you did that, you would realize that there are two major things that people don't really understand with Peloton. One is that they're basically revolutionizing the experience of fitness as a whole. They have gamified it. You create this leaderboard experience, and on top of that, you have this user profile, and you have this reward system. You have, these goals that you need to set and meet all the time. They built it in such a fun way that you feel like you're in your own little role-playing game. And that model has worked for the gaming community for decades and makes sense why it works here as well. The second point that most analysts overlook is the fact that Peloton is basically a one-to-one instructional kind of experience because it's really hard to describe to you what it's like when you're biking and you have the instructor looking you in the eye, telling you should push yourself harder, and then complimenting you on having an achievement of pushing through and getting through together with a team. That experience people will pay for if it's live. And because there's a big monitor in front of you, and because they've done this optics so well, you get that same feeling too. And this is why with these two revolutionary user experience for at-home fitness, I think this is why there's brand love for Peloton. Lastly, what I like about Peloton is the fact that they basically leveraged the tech startup model of land and expand. They started off with a super niche product of just bikes for rich people, basically, right? And now that they've managed to make enough money to IPO, they're jumping into all of the other niches. So for example, yoga, running indoors and outdoors, meditation, you have even walking for that matter. You can basically envision each of these user segment silos will create little pockets of explosive growth if they create products that are worthwhile. And this is a great time to do that because you usually have these user segments working out at gyms and yoga studios, and now they can't, so they're getting on Instagram to follow yoga instructors. And now they can jump on Peloton to be captured as a potential loyal user. Do I think this explosive growth would have happened without COVID? Absolutely not. I probably wouldn't have pitched the stock at all if COVID didn't happen. They would have grown in a consistent way. I really don't doubt that. But because of COVID, it has created a massive free organic marketing tool that has allowed Peloton to grow faster. And I think this is vindicated by the fact that Lululemon has bought Mirror. They spent $500 million to buy Mirror. That to me vindicates this idea that there is a market, a new market, that is worth capturing. In fact, I think this is a super smart play because Lululemon already has great brand love, and now they have an opportunity to upsell them from being in love with the brand and loving fitness enough to pay for expensive fitness gear, and now they can buy more fitness gear to work at home as well. That being said, this is also why my number one concern is the fact that now there are a lot more legitimate people tackling what Peloton is tackling. When I did this video in April, it wasn't the case. But now it's not so much free money anymore. Now you have a Lululemon competitor with a huge pocket. You have a kickboxing starter project, you have a rowing starter project, and you have a ton of people selling, cheaper Peloton replacements. Which, yes, it was the case back then when Peloton just came out, when I was talking about in April, but now it's a lot more intense. You have basically the lower end being covered by these cheap knockoffs, and then you have these higher end products like Lululemon being covered too. So it's all about who can capture the market the fastest at this point, in my opinion. I do think that Peloton still has a head start, but it's no longer an easy game to be had. My second concern about Peloton is I really, really hope that they're not spreading themselves thin. They're tackling a lot of user segments here, and frankly, I'd be remiss if I said I like them. I mean, all of these user segments make sense, but is it the best user experience? I don't think so. It's kind of hacky, in my opinion. It doesn't compare anything like what Peloton, the original Peloton, has to offer. For example, I think the yoga for beginners part, being that I'm a beginner, it really sucks. It makes me feel like they're trying to meet a quota. They're going so fast, I can barely get into one pose before they are already telling you to move to a different pose. That's not a great beginner yoga video. I don't know why they labeled it as such. Now, another example is I tried the free weight one, and I really liked the one-on-one instructions. It was really, really informative, and it was a good workout. But the thing is, there is no gamified aspect of it anymore. It's just a tutorial. You can get that from anywhere. So I no longer am sold on that user segment as well. Now, I don't know if it's because of COVID itself, but it definitely seems like they're throwing a bunch of MVPs, minimum viable products, out there for each of these user segments to see which one sticks before they invest more money into it. And even though that is a great approach for a startup, I find it challenging here just because I wonder if it's going to screw with their engagement and user retention ratios. Peloton has a notoriously high user retention rate, and because of this, I'm not 100% sold whether they can hold that user retention, especially after the crisis, when people will have more choices. My last concern is the valuation. I don't think at the current run rate, it justifies a $20 billion market cap. That being said, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's overvalued. I think that the stock price is optimistic, and because there was a 10% growth in the last 5 days, I think either it's because of hype or because of insider trading, and both is likely. Now, the challenge here is that if the user growth isn't as sexy as people think it is, or if their retention has fallen in a significant way because they capture so many new users, if either of those don't look pleasing, I can totally anticipate the stock falling. Full transparency here, I never expected COVID to last this long. And because of that, during the last significant bump on Peloton, I told people to sell. That being said, because COVID kept getting extended, I just kept up with the news and kept up with the trading patterns from Peloton, and I've been swing trading on it. And especially because I'm doing it, I find it a very rational way to play Peloton because I'm not fully convinced that the stock isn't overvalued yet. And so I'd rather not constantly be exposed of owning Peloton. And so I buy on the dip and sell on the high. And also paying very close attention to the news. The fact that the earnings is coming up, the safest way to do this is to sell before the earnings. Because frankly, it's the fact that the stock price has boosted so fast in the last 5 days means that the upside is probably not that much more. That's what's going to happen in a rational market. That being said, this market is very irrational. Volatility is way higher than before, which means that it can go both ways. It can still grow quite a bit, but it can also tank very, very hard if it doesn't meet expectations. So you have to basically consider these risks and figure out what makes sense for you. Especially if you have a lot of money in the stock, I would highly advise that you at least sell some of your shares. Now, if you're wondering if you should be buying into Peloton right before earnings, I think there's going to be an opportunity right before earnings because that's usually when a bunch of people are going to sell the stock because they don't want to carry that risk. And if you truly believe in the company and you believe that the risk is minimal, which I frankly do, then you can buy in on that dip. Now, that dip doesn't always happen, but that's how I would recommend you play the stock if you haven't bought into Peloton already. The safer approach is to buy after the earnings so that you have a better understanding of how they've been doing their business in the last 3 months, because a lot has changed. Other stocks you might be interested in, Lululemon is a great one. Nautilus is another one where earnings is coming up. If you're adventurous and truly believe in at-home fitness during the COVID crisis, you can even trade earnings one after another. You can actually look at one earnings to see how they perform, to kind of, in a way, predict whether the earnings for these other ones, whether they're going to do well or not. That's a pretty common strategy that I leverage every once in a while. So this is how I would advise you to invest in Peloton and the fitness industry. If you have any questions or concerns, please leave a comment. And if you have any suggestions, please hit the subscribe button and then leave me a comment as well. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to working with you next time. Thank you.